I love that episode. That was the first one that I listened to in detail in its entirety. I said, oh my gosh, she is number one, so passionate about the topic. She spoke with so much conviction, and a lot of stuff she said, I already knew because the same stuff I be preaching to other people. But for other people who are not comfortable, negotiating their salary, I'm like, y'all have to listen to this episode. So yeah, I listened to that one, sent it to 3 of my cousins and friends, like, y'all gotta listen to this, because some of them were actively job seeking, and they were, like you said, they were just so accustomed to taking the bare minimum. Whatever a company offered them is what they, generally accepted. And I feel like that's especially true for women, number one, but then also people of color. So many of us do not negotiate our salary, which is why we are brought in at the lower end of the pay scale, and why through, conversations with your colleagues, you find out that they making more than you, $10,000 more, they got better vacation packages or whatever, because we are not taught to negotiate our salary. So I love that episode. Just wanted to give you some, affirmations there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. My name is Fela Abioye, and this is How to Corporate, my digital show dedicated to helping you identify what's holding you back so you can advance your career. Are you ready for today's topic? Well, let's get started.
Today's special guest is Fela Abioye, and I actually met him through my Houston network, through my day job, my professional job. We were partnered to do a speaking engagement for NAIA, the National African American Insurance Association, and Fela blew me away. His professionalism, his planning, his organization, his public speaking, his detail orientation, like all of that, right? So I'm like, okay, this is somebody I need to know. So Fela is the founder of How to Corporate podcast, and his content is so good. I'm constantly having conversations with my family and friends about how to navigate this corporate market. And then when I discovered his podcast, I'm like, y'all need to hear this, right? So super excited to have Fela here. What's up, Fela?
First and foremost, thank you so much for this opportunity. And as you kind of shared with your audience, I was blown away by you as well. Yeah, so my name is Fela Abioye, as you indicated. I'm the founder of How to Corporate. It's a podcast focused on helping people navigate their working worlds, right? And really helping people get to where they want to be. I created this platform so that way folks from around the world, no matter what walk of life you are, but who are working typically in a corporate environment, can find tools and learning from other people's experiences in order to be able to get to where they want to be. I've been working in the corporate landscape for about 13, 14 years. And so it's been a journey. I've learned a lot. I've had a lot of great guests. And what really gets me going every day is every now and then I'll get a message, an email, a DM, someone just saying, man, your episode was so timely, or I used learning from that opportunity in my last interview or my last conversation. It's something to do with work. Right?
What are, a few of the lessons that you've learned? I know your guests share lots of great content, but just maybe 1 or 2 things off the top of your mind, tips for other people on how to navigate the corporate market.
I know this saying is said by many people very often, but I stand by that. Be the owner of your own career, right? Own your career. I've had a lot of great people in my life really kind of push that into my way of thinking, and not really just about my career, but just about life, right? Own your life, right? So in whatever way that is, but especially when it comes to your career. And sometimes it may feel like things are out of our control, whether it be the boss that you work for or the environment that you're in or the projects you get selected for, et cetera. But, besides all the quote unquote uncontrollables in life, like own your career. If you want to do something, go out and do it. You want to achieve something, go out and achieve it. Don't let other people's perspective necessarily completely change how you think of yourself and how you view yourself. So that's number one. Hey, if you're enjoying what you're hearing and learning something new, take a second to rate this episode and write a review. Oh, don't forget to share with a friend or a colleague. All right, back to the show. And then number 2, fostering and building relationships. So, and I say relationships versus networking because, we all have a sense of a network, right? So we all belong to multiple groups in one way, shape, form, or fashion in our lives, whether it be through school or whether it be through work, right? But relationships mean something a little deeper. Fostering relationships, I think, is a big thing when it comes to navigating your career. And it's not just from a superficial perspective, which again, is what I lean towards when I think about just quote unquote network. So, And again, building relationships, I think, are probably the biggest two lessons that I would have, quote unquote, learned to experience over my 13, 14 years in the corporate world.
Okay, so what sets your podcast apart from other podcasts? I feel like there are millions of podcasts available for people to tune into.
There's no doubt. There's most definitely millions of podcasts out there for sure. You know what I'll say? When you think about your career is a marathon, right? So to coin the phrase from Nipsey Hussle, right? The career is a marathon. Getting the job, getting the opportunity, right? That's the first leg of the race, but literally the first leg. And so, but it doesn't stop there. You got a long time to work, and there will be other situations where you go back to the first leg because you get a new job. But what happens in between those other legs, right? What happens when you get the job and now you got to work your way through it, right? Where you got to figure out ways how to promote yourself or how to get promoted or how to navigate, right? All the different nuances that go through that. I don't really honestly hear many, if any at all, podcasts that really talk about that. You know, there's a lot of podcasts that talk about, entrepreneurship and ownership, which is great and fantastic. And I think we need all those, but that's not for everybody, So there are many people out here who are going to get up, go to work every day and provide for their families. And that's a great life for them. But they still want to achieve. They still got aspirations to be able to be at the top of the mountain, to get to where they want to be in their fields. And so we need people who have real life experiences who are willing to share and be honest about that, so that way they can help elevate themselves to the next level too. And that's what my show is all about. It's about taking other people's real life experiences who have actually achieved in their spaces and sharing that with my listeners, so that way they can take those tools, tweak it, make it their own, and go out and achieve for themselves.
So how do you find these guests? Your guests are amazing. They all have very unique skill sets or stories, expertise to share with the world. How do you find your guests?
So I get a lot of referrals, which is awesome. And again, going back to the initial tidbit about relationships. So when I started this idea, and which I had sat on honestly for probably a little over a year, maybe a year and a half, and then finally got started with really through the help of my wife, because she was like, "You guys stop talking about this, and you guys finally do it. I don't want to hear about it no more until you finally get this thing done." So when I finally decided I was going to do this, and really all the people that I've had relationships with, whether it be through work or through school and, et cetera, all really kind of came to my aid and started saying, "Oh, I love this idea. You should have this person as a guest. You should have this person as a guest, and this person." And everyone just started flooding me with all types of guests. And so, through the quote unquote vetting process, and if you listen to my show, you'll realize that I kind of found my space over the first several episodes. And then once I really kind of dialed that in, I realized the type of people and the types of questions I wanted to ask and pointed. And so that was just a snowball effect. So that's really where I've gotten the majority of my guests is through referrals. And then some of them I've sought out, individually, of folks that I don't know. Having a podcast, of course, it does push you into the social media space. So I've had to learn to kind of navigate that space and see other content creators who are also active in this space as well. And so I've reached out to them and connected with folks, and had a couple of them on my podcast as well. So it's a combination, right, of things, but referrals has always worked out the best for me.
Think about the potential audience, right? People who are not familiar with your podcast, but, are looking for some new content, who might find value in what you have. Which episode would you suggest that they start with?
Probably a really early one that I think is really good is how to negotiate your worth, right? So this is episode number 2 with Dr. Rochelle Parks Yancey. She's an educator, a professor, resume writer, kind of a career architect, and very much so a mentor to me. And that whole episode is really about the negotiation process that goes along in the workspace, right? Because many people go out and or are seeking new opportunities, seeking jobs. They never really negotiate. They never go down the negotiating path. And so they just get a job offer and they accept, and then they kind of just keep it moving. But they don't realize how much opportunity, sometimes money, sometimes other negotiating factors that you leave on the table by not even going down the path of negotiation. And many people don't do so because of fear. Fear holds us back. We don't want to look ungrateful. We are worried that, am I asking too much, or I'm never really going to get that number that I've got in my mind. So they don't even attempt to offer a counter offer or any type of negotiation. So she really walks us through the steps of how to do it and what a successful negotiation looks like. And all the different things that one can negotiate. So, and not just salary, especially when people feel like they found the right talent and people are willing to give you an offer, right? Like, this is your opportune time to go out and command your worth. So, but, so often people just don't do it, like, at all. Or if they do it, they don't do it the most proficient way, right? So it takes practice, just like with anything that you're going to do for the first time or you don't do very regularly, right? It needs practice. So we talked through that aspect of practice, handling rejection, right? Because sometimes people say no. How do you still command what you need, and what's your low ball, your high ball, and kind of medium? So I think that's a really good episode. And the funny thing is that at a follow-up episode to that, I want to say it's like maybe episode 29, 28, counter offer, also with Dr. Yancey, because I brought it back about 30 episodes later because we just couldn't get everything into that one episode. So that whole segment was just based on counter offer. So
I love that episode. That was the first one that I listened to in detail in its entirety. I said, oh my gosh, she is number one, so passionate about the topic. She spoke with so much conviction, and a lot of stuff she said, I already knew because the same stuff I be preaching to other people. But for other people who are not comfortable, negotiating their salary, I'm like, y'all have to listen to this episode. So I listened to that one, sent it to 3 of my cousins and friends. Like, y'all got to listen to this, because some of them were actively job seeking, and they were, like you said, they were just so accustomed to taking the bare minimum. Whatever a company offered them is what they, generally accepted. And I feel like that's especially true for women, number one, but then also people of color. So many of us do not negotiate our salary, which is why we are brought in at the lower end of the pay scale, and why through, conversations with your colleagues, you find out that they making more than you. $10,000 more. They got better vacation packages or whatever, because we are not taught to negotiate our salary. So I love that episode. Just wanted to give you some, affirmations there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Some folks go, 20, 30 plus years and never negotiate a dime, and you just leave so much on the table you possibly could have had. And like you said, situations get into the workforce, and now you find out that colleagues that are doing the exact same work, same level of education, same level of just work experience, and they're making so-and-so X more. Well, they negotiated their top dollar and you didn't. So now we're here.
Right.
So that's just one of a few other episodes too. And I did want to kind of maybe hit on 2 more. Imposter syndrome. What was another very, very highly listened to episode. That was with Kiera Suggs, and that's episode 22. It's exactly how it sounds, right? Imposter syndrome, I think, is something that many people deal with, but don't recognize that it is imposter syndrome, right? So where we don't feel confident in speaking up for ourselves. We don't feel confident in taking credit for the work, the achievements that we have had within our career. And we feel nervous. We overthink. We're constantly second guessing ourselves. And the common thing that you also see with my guests is that, people get real. They talk about their own personal, challenge with it, right? So Kiera talks about how she has dealt with imposter syndrome. And on that episode, right, she had just got promoted to the head of HR within her organization, right? So the entire head of HR, right, talking about how she herself still has dealt with imposter syndrome. So I think there's a lot of power in that when you see people who are maybe at the top of their game, but still dealing with things that, everyone deals with. And so that's a really popular one. Another one is episode 23, introvert in an extrovert world. So that one also resonated, I think, with a lot of people, because when you think about what the model employee looks like, or the model person that looks like in your organization, like the person that everyone kind of deems as being the go-to, being a star performer, a superstar, and whatever it is they do, they tend to, quote unquote, have extrovert tendencies in most organizations. But, what if that's not your nature? What if you don't come across as extroverted? Maybe you know how to handle yourself in the room, you know how to be around people, but you are very much so, I'm a thinker, right? You're to yourself a little bit, right? Quiet. But, people don't deem those qualities, quote unquote, being qualities to emulate. So how do one still go out and achieve? How does one still go out and remain themselves without necessarily compromising who they are, right? In order to kind of continue to progress their career. So yeah, like I said, I've got a lot of just different things that really touch on soft skills, which is really probably what majority of my show is about, right? A lot of the different soft skills that ebbs and flows that we deal with in the working world. So to name a few.
All right. So now let's shift and talk a little bit about money. Do you make any money from your podcast yet? Is that a goal of yours, or are you just doing this to educate the audience?
Yeah. So I do make some money, right? So it's not a lot of money, right? To be honest. So the intent of this show was not really financially driven, right? So the main purpose of my show was I felt like there was a need and there was a void that I wanted to fill. So that's where I started, right? So I started from an aspect of educating, an aspect of helping folks the way they have helped me. And so that's the spirit in which I operate. But I do focus on different ways to create different revenue streams. So clearly I got a How to Corporate shirt on, right? So, and if you ever want to buy any of my merch, right, you can go to my link tree at How to Corporate and check it out, and or drop me a DM, right, if you want to buy merch, right? So I sell hats, I sell polo, right? And then I also use How to Corporate to do some different speaking engagements, right? So I'll speak to students and other folks kind of represent the How to Corporate brand, right? So I get revenue that way as well. And I've got some other ideas in which I'm going to use. But again, the main thing is trying to spread the word, right? Trying to get the brand out there. So, but one of the main things that I'm thinking about coming up is book writing, right? So taking all this knowledge that I've got from many of my guests and all the things of my own personal experience and tailor that into a book, not a thick book, but probably just a little pamphlet, right? Something that an easy read for folks who, they get information, they learn different ways. Some people like learning through videos, some people like learning through, and others like learning right through reading. So yeah, but I do make some revenue.
All right. I love that you share what's to come with your book. But okay, so we heard advertisements, I imagine, on the podcast, because your podcast is available on various streaming platforms. We heard merch. We heard speaking engagements. And a fellow also told me that he does a little bit of consulting too. I don't know if you said that just now, but
I do some consulting. I don't advertise it as much because it just requires so much more time, right? So of me, and nowadays, right, time is definitely a commodity for sure. So, but I have done some consulting work, definitely through the How to Corporate podcast, sure.
All right. So I just kind of wanted to circle back to that because I've had people come to me and say that they want to start a podcast. And I'm like, okay, what's your why behind it? Because they see New Currency Club, which is honestly just YouTube right now. It will be a podcast eventually. But then they think that it's a way to make a ton of money. And I'm like, nope, I would rethink this. Like, if you're trying to start a podcast just to make money, I'm like, no. What value are you going to add to your audience, right? What is your reason behind it? What do you have to share? What's going to set you apart from other people? Because every day there are millions of things competing for our time, energy, and attention. So don't start a podcast just because you think you're going to make money out of it, because very few podcasts actually make money. So I'm happy that you brought up, the various ways that yours is generating money, but it's outside of advertisements. It's through merch and, other things that you're using to get your brand in front of people. So thank you for that.
Hey, if you're enjoying what you're hearing and learning something new, take a second to rate this episode and write a review. Oh, don't forget to share with a friend or a colleague. All right, back to the show.
Okay, so next up, I want to talk about challenges. You've had your podcast for about 2 years now, but what is maybe, what are some of the greatest challenges or some of the stuff that happens behind the scenes that people don't think about goes into creating and sustaining a podcast?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And I think you alluded to it earlier when you talked about the reasons. I just give a lot of credit to content creators after going down this experience. And like I said before, I'm not big on social media, but you take for granted like all the different people and the engines that go into creating content, all the things that we enjoy and like. And so, I would not consider myself a quote unquote creative in this space prior to going into it. Like the most quote unquote creative things I did was usually more music based, right? So, because I was a, musician growing up. But man, just the editing, the hours, the trying to quote unquote make it perfect, right? The sound quality, the video quality, the lighting, right? Having the right the guest, the timing, the technical issues that go into it. Like, it's so many different elements, of course, which we were dealing with earlier today. So, it's just it's so many things that go into this. And at any point, one could just be like, you know what, I'm done. I don't have time for this. Like, I don't have time for this. I got so many other things that I could be doing right now. But I keep coming back to it. I keep doing this because I think about my why, right? And other people have helped me, push me when I do feel tired and weary, because they reinforce my why as well, which is to help others, right? And to help people get to where they want to be. And I'm hoping that somebody listens to, you don't have to be an avid listener of How to Corporate, but if you listen to one episode and you were like, yo, this one right here, this one spoke to me. This one was exactly the message I needed to hear at this time right now for whatever it is I'm dealing with. And you want to share that with a couple people, boom, that's all I need right there, right? So I would love for you to come back and listen to more, but if that's all you get out of it, I'm good with that. So, but to bring this all full circle, it's a lot that goes into this, and just big ups to content creators out there and all the folks who have the time and the energy and are doing this stuff for the right reasons, because it's necessary. It's necessary. I know, being on the consuming end of it for many years, I think appreciated all the time and energy and effort that goes into this. But now that I'm on the other end of it, right? So I have a newfound appreciation. Sure.
All right. So what is your greatest accomplishment with How to Corporate?
Greatest accomplishment, I probably would say, is the impact I believe I've had with my listeners. So I've had people directly message me, email me, and tell me how these episodes have had a direct impact on their career. Other folks talk to me about how much it resonated. And I talked about the episode before around the imposter syndrome. I used to get a lot of messages around that when that episode first came out, and how much it resonated with them and how they felt heard. They were searching for the words of how to describe how they felt, and the episode brought that out for them. So I would just say, honestly, just the impact with the listeners, because one, that's just what keeps me going. That's what allows me to find ways to make this better and really focus in on the listener. Because in the beginning, I had an idea, and if you follow the journey of How to Corporate, you'll see how the episodes have evolved, right? The key theme of the show remains consistent throughout, right? But the format, the style, and me just niching down to the listener, right? You see that evolution kind of happen, over the episodes from 1 through, 30 plus, that I'm into this now. So yeah, so my greatest accomplishment for sure is just the impact with my listeners. So that's what keeps me going every day.
Okay, what's next for your brand and your podcast?
Yeah, so I mentioned this earlier, but definitely having a book, that is produced specifically around all the learning of How to Corporate, and through all the different interviews, the different insights that many of the guests have provided about just navigating the corporate realm and being able to take your career to the next level, and the how. That's what's next on the horizon. It's something that I hope to, produce this year before the end of the year is a big goal for me, and really get that out to the masses, because again, I just recognize different people have different ways of learning. I'm more of an audiobook kind of person, but I also like podcasts too, but some people like to read physical books too. So that's a big goal for me, is to get a written form book out there. And because I've gotten more comfortable listening to the sound of my own voice, I'm probably going to do an audio book as well. So look for that on the horizon. I've already started kind of the early, I would say, framework of what that's going to look like. So, but now I just got to sit down and work through that. So that's a goal for this year.
All right. So I want to thank you for your patience, number one, but your patience, time, energy, all the insights that you share with our audience, our viewers, and our listeners. So with that being said, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to join the club, and we will see you next time.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. For more content, click the link in my bio to follow How to Corporate on all social media platforms. Until next time, keep building.